Hey gamers, let's talk about dashes, and more specifically, their freeze frames. Most experienced runners will know that dashes actually freeze the in-game timer briefly, which is the reason why spamming dashes in cassette rooms saves time while waiting for cycles. In the vanilla game, cassette switch blocks are the only objects which move during freezes of the in-game timer. Moving blocks, enemies, Madeline, and basically anything else interactable will freeze during this time. Since the in-game timer doesn't move, no time save or time loss occurs. For proof, here's what happens when you spam dashes on an autoscroller. As you can see, there is no time saved or lost from spamming dashes. This isn't what this video is mostly about, but I was sure I would get questions about the relation between the two things, and I figured it was a good idea to mention it for anyone who didn't know. So, what exactly do I want to talk about? Well, there's more to dash freeze frames than just freezing the in-game timer. On the first frame of a dash, Madeline will be frozen for one frame while everything around her advances as normal. Again, this is why spamming dashes on an autoscroller while waiting for enemy cycles has no effect. This means that dashes in any direction will have an inherent one frame where Madeline is entirely stationary. For a dash to break even or save time, it must save this one stationary frame at minimum. This does in fact mean it's theoretically possible for a dash to lose time. If your dash fails to save at least a frame, it's strictly slower to do it. This is a fairly rare condition, but it does come up often enough to where it's worth knowing in my opinion. By far the place in a run where this is most relevant is rock bottom of 6A. Here are several examples in that level of places where dashing is strictly worse. To know if a dash loses time or not, here's a rule of thumb I usually use. Say I have a situation where I want to interact with something as fast as possible, and don't care about my speed afterwards. Examples of this might include end-of-level triggers, battleline orbs, and auto-score block activations. In all these cases, there's something that influences my position afterwards to where I only care about interacting with the object as fast as possible. Any penalties, such as a dash capping my speed, are things I don't have to worry about. If I'm moving near or above hyperdash speed, then it is mathematically worse to dash in this instance, and the dash probably loses time. I still think this is difficult to explain in words though, so a few more examples to beat this home. Let's show off an example of end-of-level triggers. I see a lot of players ultra into the exit of 2A. This actually loses a frame. And this idea applies with the exit of 1A, of course. You might be noticing that really short dashes at high speeds tend to not save time. My personal favorite example is the battleline orb in 0 meters. A funny trend I saw before this became a bit more commonly known was that good players tended to press as many buttons as possible at the start of this room, which actually, this seemingly scrubby play of just jumping in a battle line was the fastest on average all along. People would grounded ultra, jump in horizontal dash into battle line, but never just jump. At this point, some of you are probably thinking that this seems like not a worthwhile thing to worry about. Comparing optimal execution, you're only saving a frame or breaking even at best, so it's probably not worth the trouble. However, this fails to consider something. The problem with thinking it only saves a frame is that this assumes best case execution for both. By pressing less buttons, you're opening up less possible chances for you to lose time. Someone playing particularly greedy might try to dash as early as possible, trying to maximize the benefit of what they think is an optimal dash. By doing this, the dash could end early, and it could cap Madeline's speed, which could lose a significant amount of frames. If you've been watching some of my examples carefully, you might have noticed that sometimes the time lost from dashing was greater than a frame. More inputs equals more potential places for failure. Work smarter, not harder, basically. To really beat this point home, let's show the inspiration for making this video in the first place. Here's something I noticed while looking at top-level Summit IL runs. This vertical auto-scroller block in 2,000 meters. Many runners will opt to dash directly into the block to land cleanly on top. Since this skips grabbing the side of the block, you save exactly one frame, but this one frame is lost by dash freeze frames. While this isn't strictly slower, there's no reason to dash here compared to this jumping and grabbing the side, which is less inputs. Doing a dash risks over or undershooting the block, and you could possibly lose a significant amount of time. This could really add up over the course of the run. As you can see, despite the two strats being identical in terms of time, there's a lot of instances where I was just kind of bleeding frames at random by doing the dash. By adding more inputs, there's more places for me to lose time. With his permission, I wanted to show off Coral's any percent PB, and show off that even the topmost players aren't immune to losing time to these sorts of things. Coral opts to do the horizontal dash into this auto-scorer block in 2,000 meters, but he's just a tiny bit too high, and as a result, he ends up losing several frames. If you opted not to dash, you could be grabbing the block from right about here. So, if we count frames from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Coral lost about 8 frames here in this PB to just pressing an extra button that he didn't need to. Again, work smarter, not harder. Looking at the top 10 for the Summit IL at the time of this video, only 2 of the top 10 IL runs opted to not do the horizontal dash. Several other people opted to do the horizontal dash instead, and as a result, over half of them lost time, whether that be 1 frame or multiple frames. I also saw people do things such as try to jump directly on the block, or even down dash while slightly over the top of the block. It makes me wonder if some people found the timing of this horizontal dash too inconsistent for the point of Summit where nerfs start to kick in, so they opted to do something else. When, all along, the simplest way to play the room was also the fastest. All that said, the best way to know if a dash truly saves time or not is to test it yourself and work by example. It's usually fairly clear if a dash actually saves time or not in these situations, as you often only have to test 1 or 2 buffered inputs. As always, make sure you balance risk and reward too. For example, one weird personal preference I have in 6B Reprieve is this horizontal dash into battle line here. While it is strictly slower to dash here, I do find it significantly harder to control my height without this dash. It only loses a frame, so the trade-off is worthwhile in my opinion. It's best to test these things out yourself and see if there are any weird cases like that for you. This knowledge isn't anything that will save multiple seconds off your any percent PB, but it can definitely shave some frames here or there, but most importantly improve your consistency. While pressing a lot of buttons is fun, playing the game more efficiently will eliminate a lot of small places for small mistakes. Hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.